Okay, I'm back working on the chassis again. Get my pointer out. I've got everything drilled except for I need to knock this hole out a little bit bigger. This is for my choke. Did get the choke in, and it's not all that big. It's actually, if I get the holes lined up, about that big right there. Down at this end, the reverb driver, I've got the holes drilled for that. Again, it's almost the same size as the choke, so that one's all done. These holes, of course, here do get all these holes, the bigger ones, get the rubber grommet that goes in those, which is see that size. Find myself here. Whoa, here we are. It's either that size or it has a bigger OD into it, but the inside diameter, not outside diameter, I'm sorry. The inside diameter is bigger, the outside diameter is the same, so these all go into these holes right here to insulate your wires going through so your wires don't get all chewed up when they go through the holes. So, and I did go ahead and drill for my mounting holes at all four corners for this board and drilled my wire entrance holes. The board itself right here won't get a rubber grommet because it's not necessary. It's insulating board, don't have to worry about scraping the insulation, but of course the bottom side right here, there's always a chance you can nick your wire. So next step I need to do, other than, like I said, hog out this one here, which will only take a minute, I did drill my ground holes. That's for my power cord wiring and my preamp wiring up at this end right here, off of the nearest point being these jacks. And I take it back. I got this ass backwards. I'm sorry. This is the choke. Here's my hole already for the choke. Kind of got backwards. This is actually the hole for my ground for my center tap for the HT leads and center tap for the filament leads. And the other day when I was talking about lining stuff out and I was looking at the front of this, and I was talking about the possibility of having to stack things, I got the cart before the horse like I usually do, and everything is fine. I thought it was. So I have volume, master, treble, bass. There is no mid, although I'm probably going to put a selector switch right here to give 3 different values on the mid, because typically Fender's fixed value is 6.8K, and then you have the reverb, speed, and intensity. So all the holes are as is going across the top. So next thing to figure out is put the turret board in, and I have put a pot in here to see what my clearances are right here, because and I did take my trusty template jig and I put my standoffs on it to simulate the standoffs on the turret board when it's done, so I can now set this down inside to try to see where my spacing wants to be, as far as, do I want this down all the way this direction, which makes it kind of close to where my sockets are, or do I want to tuck this up underneath close to this pot, because see, it clears the pot, or do I want to put it precisely in the center? Well, as I was talking the other day, one thing to consider is the input jacks. And the input jacks right here, as you can see, would hit the board right there. But if you spin it over like that, I'm going to set the phone down for a minute. Okay. As you can see, it's pretty close. But it does slide underneath that contact. And of course, the turret board is going to be insulated, so it could go a little bit of wherever it wants to go. But then you need to factor in that you're going to take this jack, here's a blank one, and shove it in the hole like so, and make sure that nothing changes the way it's going to go. So when I was talking the other day about real estate space being ate up on your turret board, you need to allow that you don't have any components right in this area, because you don't want this jack, or obviously the one above it, to be in its space. So what I'll probably do is have a minimal spacing like this. And the reason for that would be to allow my wires from the backside for the reverb driver to be able to slide underneath the board freely, which is roughly in this location right in here. It'll come underneath the board. This gives me plenty of room on the top side also to bring my wires through from my cake pan where the capacitors are. This gives me enough room to clear here. This gives me enough room where nothing's in the way down here. So you kind of got to take all that in consideration when you're laying one out, because you don't want to go to all the trouble, do all this knocking out and everything. You build your turret board and you go stick it in, and it's kind of like shit, nothing fits. So a little bit of mock-up and trial doesn't hurt a thing. So I'm going to go ahead and hog out that hole for, no, don't have to hog that up, back it up. Last thing I need to do will be to drill for where the standoffs are going to be. So I can take these standoffs off this plate, lay the plate down, mark this, go ahead and drill this. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll figure out how far down the board comes this way to drill the last final set. 3mm board is pretty stiff. It doesn't flex a lot when you, like this jig does when I push on it right here. I mean, it's pretty damn stiff, so it doesn't move. 2mm moves quite a bit. 2mm moves about like this board does. I have used 2mm in the past. I don't use it anymore because 3mm doesn't cost that much more, and you know, it's just pennies on the dollar, and I don't want to put something in I'm not super proud of. The last thing I need to do this chassis will be to, on each end, I'm going to mount a piece of angle iron that goes here and out this way, that extends the area to be able to drill and mount this into the cabinet itself. Because if I go to mount it in the cabinet here right now and keep my nut as close as possible to this end, I'll simulate this pencils my bolt going through, which it clears, and there's nothing in the way here, which I allowed for that. And down at that end, there's nothing in the way there, allowed for that. It's still going to put it very close to the lines that gone off the top, but the curvature of the cabinet comes like this and curves like this, about right in this area right here. So you're really close to the curve. Now, it's not the inside curve right here on this side, but that curve is radiused over like that when they make the cabinet, because they use a rollover router bit. So your curve actually is not at this point right here. Your curve actually comes back to the top of the curve, stops about right here. If this was a 21-inch chassis, which is what Leo originally put on those, that would give me a ½ inch out here, so your hole would be roughly exactly at this point right here. Would just barely miss that radius on both sides here and here. So I'm going to put a piece of aluminum angle iron I'll drill and fasten it to the side and put my oblong slot in it to be able to adjust this back and forth or sideways once the holes are drilled into the cabinet. That's the last drilling I've got to do with this chassis after I get the turret board holes drilled into this. And then I'm going to flip from working on the chassis to working on the turret board. And the only reason I'm going to flip over is I purchased some 9-pin sockets from AES, and I didn't pay attention as close as I should have. These are Michael-X sockets right here. And if you notice, which is a good brand, but I normally use the Belton sockets. But if you notice, they've got this very prominent ridge in their stamping right here that sticks up right here. And a 440 screw would probably go through, but when I go to mount the base of the tube shield on there, it stands that base up off the tube shield higher than I want it to be, and I don't like the looks of that, so I'll use these sockets for some other projects someplace else. And I've got some Belton 9 pins coming for this. And you can see a little bit too, for people wondering what the difference is. You can kind of see the difference in the phenolic and coloring. The one on the right's a Belton, the one on the left is Michael-X. And they're both quality tubes for the application I'm going with right here. The only way for me to remedy that is to try to use 632 screws on these holes and drill these holes out to accommodate where a 632 screw will slide through this hole, and that's how I managed to slice the hell out of my thumb earlier to spill blood on everything. So I'm not going to do that because I don't like that. Besides, it hurts like a bitch. So I'm going to transfer the work over onto the turret board. So the next video after this, I might go ahead and do one showing the wings so people have an idea of why to do that. You need to bear in mind too that when you're working with tweed cabinets come usually in two different options. They'll have one where it's the raw tweed, which is what this cabinet was delivered as, or the tweed has a finish sprayed onto it, which is usually a shellac. The reason for that is raw tweed it shows fingerprints, it shows everything, so you have to be very careful. Keep your hands washed when you're working with that. When you go to deliver it to the customer, you're not going to actually see the fingerprint, but you're going to see slightly darkened smudge spots where your hands get dirt on them from the working with around the aluminum and or steel chassis, whatever you're using. The tweed cabinet that I finished on the originally it was called Harvard, and I changed the name so I didn't have a conflict of interest. Called it the Patriot combo cabinet. I used this Zinsser Bullseye Shellac. This sprays on, it works really good. I gave the original cabinet a couple coats of the this is very clear, very transparent. I wanted it to have that particular cabinet to have a dark vintage look, so I used the Bullseye Shellac in amber to color it a little bit. And you really need to have your thoughts well planned out to use this and have your shit together, because once you start to put this stuff on, if it runs, you're going to have a hard time getting the run out without seeing a dark streak where the run is. Doesn't mean that it won't be flat to the touch, but you always see the dark streak. It can be done, but you've got to work fast and have all of your ducks in a row. So if you really want a vintage look, a coat of this on first, and then 2 spray coats of the clear, and it'll still have a tack feel to it even when it cures for a long period of time. But it'll look like a fender from the same age period that the tweeds were all built in back in the mid to late 50s, if that's what you're going for. Some people leave the tweed Tolex natural. That's what they prefer it. They would rather it has more of a greenish tint to it when it's raw and not sprayed. And either way is fine. It's just whatever you prefer. But just bear in mind that if you leave it green over a period of time, all the wear marks and stuff are going to show on it, where it's going to look somewhat dirtier, versus if you take the time to go ahead and spray the cabinet, then it pretty much seals in the original color and everything that's in it. I could not find the spray can Zinsser in a amber tint. All I could find was a clear tint. Perhaps someplace else makes it that way. I couldn't find it locally. All I could find in was the clear tint. So just want to bear that in mind. So when I put these angle pieces on up here and have those slotted for the screw to, and I got parts scattered all over the damn bench, so I can't find it right at the moment. And when the screw goes through out in this particular direction here, when I go to mark it on the cabinet to do the mock-up, so I know where to drill the cabinet, I'll make sure my hands are freshly washed. When I do that, I'll get my wife's assistance and let her be able to mark the cabinet hole for me. And then when I deliver, have this amp delivered to the customer, I'll try to keep it as pristine as possible, so that way it's their decision, do whatever they want to do. And either way, it's going to make a beautiful amp. It's just a matter of what you like and what your taste go. Some people don't like the yellow look. It kind of looks like a tobacco smoke stain, and they don't care for it. They'd rather have the lighter, cleaner look of it. And either way is fine. It's just whatever you like. Just thought I'd mention that because a lot of people don't realize that. And at Tube Depot, when you get those, they all come with no finish on them, versus if you, and bear in mind again that the cabinet that I got from Tube Depot was made by Mojotone, because it was in a Mojotone box. But if you place your order at Mojotone and wait 8 weeks for the cabinet to be built, you can order that in natural with no finish, or you can order it with a light finish already sprayed on it. They do that as an upcharge extra for you, so just kind of bear that in mind. That is available. But that's what I'm going to do with the turret board. I'll stop right here. Kind of give you an idea of some of the other things to think about when you're laying out an amp. I do have the 2-day break between the last video. I did go through and draw out all the layout in paint, so I know exactly how I want it laid out. And what I'll do is I'll bring that layout out and check it to my template here. Make a mark on my template in the area that I don't want anything, and make sure that I don't have to move my layout and adjust it horizontally one way or the other to allow for that space. Now, it's not only this space, because this is my 6G3 channel. I also have to accommodate here for these 2 jacks here also. So I think I've planned for that accordingly. I'll need to verify when I get down to this end that I have the same amount of clearance, because